We begin with the death of Republican Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. He died Saturday from a brief and sudden illness at age 71. According to the medical examiner's preliminary findings, Graham's cause of death was an aortic dissection, which is a tear in the body's main artery. The long-term lawmaker was a former military lawyer and retired Air Force colonel. Known as a foreign policy hawk, Graham served in Congress for more than 3 decades in both the House and in the Senate. Graham ran for president back in 2016, going head-to-head with then-candidate Donald Trump. While the pair once had a rocky relationship, they later became close allies. In fact, President Trump says he spoke to Graham hours before his death. The senator has just returned from a diplomatic visit to Ukraine. Mr. Trump paid tribute to Graham yesterday.
He was like a member of the family to me. It's very tough, actually. It's amazing.
Mr. President,
he was such an advocate. He was, if he wanted to get something, and he had a unique ability. He was able to deal with Democrats and Republicans. If I had a problem, a real problem, I wouldn't often ask. But if I had a problem with a Democrat, he could work it out. He was a great politician, actually.
Now, this morning, the White House is honoring Senator Graham with flags there at half-staff. President Trump ordered all American flags to be lowered through Saturday. CBS News political director Fin Gomez joins us now with more reaction to this. Fin, good morning. Most of the world seeing this as a shock. Just help us understand some of the reaction where you are as people absorb this news.
Yeah, Errol, I spoke to a dozen people over the weekend, including some congressional lawmakers, about, this sudden news. I think, as you mentioned, there was this initial shock over his sudden death. As you said, he just traveled to Ukraine to meet with Zelensky, an issue that mattered greatly to him. And I think that shock was replaced now by some sober reflection, respect, reverence by some in his party and some outside of his party. And I think that outpouring that you talked about has been bipartisan from across the political landscape, even from some of his greatest critics, frankly, to the president, who became a strong ally of. And I think some of his Senate colleagues spoke about his reputation on the Hill and his bipartisanship. Take a listen.
As a public servant, we certainly know him as a fierce fighter on foreign policy, as a person who put on the uniform for 30 years, a colonel in our military. He loved America passionately.
I could trust him. I counted him as a friend. I could say things to him and say it's just between us and know that that's where it would end. We need more people like that. A trusting relationship between senators of different parties can lead to some positive legislative achievements. We need more Lindsey Grahams.
Many Republicans and some Democrats that I spoke with over the weekend, they said that even though they disagreed with him on issues, he was someone who really was known to reach across the aisle at times to really trying to get some consensus. Errol.
And as we noted, Fin, he had just returned from a trip to Ukraine. President Zelensky saying Senator Graham had made 10 visits to the nation.
That's right.
Foreign policy topics were very important to the senator. Would that be the most glaring absence now without his advocacy, or was there another area where he felt that the issues were most important?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, Errol. I mean, whether it was Ukraine, Israel, Iran, or military spending, he was one of the Senate's most outspoken sort of national security hawks. Prime Minister Netanyahu even called Graham one of America's strongest advocates for confronting Iran and standing firmly with U.S. allies. I mean, I think his absence doesn't necessarily change America's this side of politics on the Hill overnight, but I think it does remove one of the loudest and most influential voices pushing Congress and at times even the president to take more of a muscular approach overseas, and that's a role that the question is who will now fill that role on the Senate side.
Yeah, well, we'll get a sense of what comes next at this moment. But Fin, just for our viewers, what does happen to Graham's vacant seat? Just in our last few seconds.
That's right. I spoke to some South Carolina officials over the weekend. The process now moves quickly under South Carolina law. Candidate filing for the Republican primary opens up July 21st and closes July 28th. And there's going to be now a special Republican primary for the upcoming reelection. That would be on August 11th. So we're expecting a Republican primary on August 11th, and and the Democratic side was already decided. Annie Andrews won back June 9th. There's been some, I spoke to a lot of South Carolina Republicans, Errol. One name that keeps popping up is Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette. Evette ran for governor this past year, lost to Alan Wilson, but was initially endorsed not only by Governor Henry McMaster, but also President Trump. President Trump also endorsed Wilson later. That primary, Wilson ended up winning, but that is a name that keeps coming up as someone with, as a possible replacement, because Governor McMaster has to appoint an interim senator, but also as someone who can possibly rise to be that nominee. So we'll see what happens, Errol.
All right, and that lieutenant governor will be on CBS News 24/7 later today. Folks will want to stay close for that. Fin, thank you.